Welcome to this presentation on the highlights of BlueWorx Support Pack 13 release. I'm Craig Bennett and I'm the Product Development Manager for BlueWorx at Essentia. I'm joined today by Carl McGowan. A lot of you know Carl as he's been involved with many of the pre-sales engagements and implementation projects for BlueWorx. Welcome to the session, Carl. You and I have done many of these now, and I think our customers will be happy that we keep these releases rolling out.
Yeah, thanks, Craig. I know there are a number of customers looking forward to getting the latest release and taking advantage of the new functionality, so it won't be long until we see the functions today out in the wild. Please remember to keep your suggestions coming in. As you'll hear today, many of the new features are based on your requests, and the product wouldn't be where it is today without your feedback.
Thanks, Carl. So our target audience for this session is customers and partners who already have a working knowledge of BlueWorx and will move through it at a reasonable pace. If you're new to BlueWorx, then I'm sure you'll gain insight into the business value that it can bring to your operations. We will start with a recap on the roadmap before moving through some key areas of improvements. There's approximately 50 improvements of note and 11 new features in this release. That's too many to meaningfully cover in this session, but all are documented in our release notes and online documentation. Of the items we're going to review, 23 of them relate to direct customer requests, as highlighted by Carl. So while some of what we review may seem minor, we've included them to make sure that you can see us progressing your requests. In the description section of this video are quick links to each of the main agenda topics. I'll be demoing those items with a green header and talking through the others. The roadmap is published after conclusion of the previous support packs and is in priority order, containing those items we intend to target for delivery in the next release. During the course of a release, we may adjust their priority and add or remove items based upon customer demands and as a result of further detailed analysis. Right, so let's get started. The first area that I'd like to discuss is around the user experience improvements that we've included. And the first of those is around buttons. So after doing a detailed analysis, it was evident that in a number of places the use of buttons versus text was not always consistent, and that in some cases similar operations were being represented differently. We also used buttons for icons for different form factors like mobile versus desktop, which added to the technical debt of the product and made customer modifications, training and documentation a little bit more complicated. As a result, we've further standardized the use of buttons and icons. While not exclusively, button icons will now be used in the core application rather than text, unless there's no suitable icon, in which case we will use text only. There are some rare exceptions in the core app where we will continue to use both, as we will generally do in the administration areas. We've included a new microchart for order operations, and that's to visually show the work values rather than the previous 4 fields, and that's something I'll demonstrate soon. We've included a new filter for order operations so that if you're using the personnel assignment, that is at the operational level for your work assignment, then users can now filter the operations list to show only those operations that they're assigned to, rather than all the operations for the orders that they have on the device. Same area in the operations list, we've now show the green left board where the operations has been completed, which is consistent with how we've shown the orders. Also, in terms of time collection, improve the user experience there, and that was in response to customer requests around collective time entry. Okay, so let's go and have a look at that microchart now. As we go through these demos, in some cases I'm going to use a system that is on slightly older Neptune release with a slightly older SAP UI5 library, and in other cases, I'm going to move up and show you the new look and feel SAP UI5 library that we are now going to support. So I'll move across to the new one for this one, and we're going to go and have a look at order operations. So if we drill into the orders and have a look at the operations list, we can now see that there is a chart here. If I go into the order itself, you can see that it's also represented in a similar way. So I can show the actual work, in which in this case there's 0, there's 2 people assigned. The forecast work from the planner was 16 hours, and that's consistent with the plan since we haven't made any updates. I'll go and add some time, and so I put in that I'd done 10 hours with another 8 to go. and save that. Then it's showing that 10 is an actual that's increased. And because I said I had another 8 to go, the forecast has changed from 16 hours to 18 hours, which means that I'm actually gone over the plan. So it's a nice visual cue. Carl, anything to talk on those functions?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I love the new UI. We're seeing the new UI version here. I think it is an improvement. SAP's done a great job there. The work you've done here improving the UI, it's the most common feedback we get is around changes of UI. It would be fair to say that it's not always in alignment. Different people potentially want to change it in different directions, but I think the improvements we're making to the product overall will help everyone, and then people will make their tweaks as they need to. But I love this new functionality. Thanks.
Okay, on to some new ones. Standard text. So we now allow you to optionally take the SAP plant maintenance standard text that you've configured in SAP using transaction CA10 for those of you that are into that detail to your device. The texts are available for use in all the long text areas of the app, so orders, operations, and notifications. By allowing its use with operations, this means that in addition to the obvious adding a decent amount of text, it allows you with field orders to be able to connect with inspections that you've specifically configured to use the standard text values in operations. So that's quite a neat and improved feature. And materials improvements. So we've added a storage location authorizations. So there is the option in SAP to put given authorization checks on storage locations. And so now when you're doing online material searches, that will be taken into account. In terms of goods issues, when you make materials issues for component requirements on an order, then when this is processed in SAP, it will trigger a Delta update for that order on next sync so that you can see the actions that you've taken coming back through to you immediately. Okay, so I'll just go in and demo the first of those. And I've switched over to our older SAP UI5 version here. So you can immediately see the change in the look and feel. Come in and find an asset. And I'm going to create a work order for it. And if I come into the operation that's created, you'll see now that there's a standard text field that's available. And I'll choose the one for a tank inspection. It's updated the text and also the selection of the standard key field has meant that there's now an inspection that's been connected to this operation based upon the configuration that we've made and the addition of the standard text. Carl, anything to add on those improvements?
I really want to talk about that one you've just demonstrated. We've got a number of customers who have pointed out to us they don't have as much back-end planning functionality as we anticipated for them. So they've got operators out in the field that act as their own planners, and the combination of this functionality where they can pick a standard text and get the inspection they want, and the ad hoc inspections, which were in a previous release. If you haven't looked at that functionality, please do. Enable the operator or the field staff to add inspections in different scenarios without having to go back to the back end and request that to be added. And, you know, there are organisations out there without a strong planning function, and this becomes really critical for them because that planning function is really being executed in the field. So I think we're supporting that business scenario with that more operator-led planning function with these sorts of enhancements to the standard system. So it's a great progress for those customers.
Thanks, Carl. It's good for you to highlight that. So the next couple of items in terms of notification improvements. First up, so we've added the ability to populate the maintenance activity type on notifications where customers have enabled that in SAP. Like SAP, the value populates into any orders that are then created based upon that notification, where the activity type is appropriate for the order type. In the bill of materials area, we've completely revised and optimized the code used to generate the bills of material used in BlueWorx. Next is some improvements in the maps area. We've added a scale bar and made improvements in the context of what users see when they navigate to the map. In terms of Esri, and we've spoken about this in prior releases, we've successfully completed technical analysis on the use of the Esri map control to allow support of scalable vector graphics as the map source and to store this on device for offline use. That clears the way for future delivery of this feature that's been requested by a number of customers. Navigate to Google. You can navigate to a specific location feature using Google Maps when online instead of just the closest part of an asset location, allowing you, for example, to locate to a work action, annotation, or specific location of one of many that are displayed. We've added a new spatial type for measurement points. So we now support you being able to locate a specific feature for a measurement point as you could already for a functional location or equipment. And I'll demonstrate that coming up. And we've introduced support for attachments for spatial features. So if you want to, when you go and capture something in a spatial sense, you can now take a photo or locate or upload files against that. And so that's for actions, annotations, locations, and measurement points as well. If you do it from measurement point, it will attach to the parent measurement point, and locations and annotations will attach to the parent function location or equipment record back in SAP. Let's go and have a look at that now. Okay, so I'm going to go into my assets, have a look for one of the local rivers. So a good example of a linear asset in this case. And we can see that there are a couple of, 3 measurement points that are associated with this. And we can also see that on a map that they have been located as well as the location itself. So if we actually drill down into one of these measurement points, you can see it now has a map tab as well as documents that with some photos. Here's the map tab, so it's showing its own location and that of its parent. If I go into the map view, so you can see that it's showing the parent record, which is the river, and also the measurement point. Any comments on that one, Carl?
I think there's a whole lot of really exciting stuff here. Maps integration is something for which we're well known as leading the market and extending this, make sure our customers always gets the best experience.
Okay, some more improvements. So master data sync steps. Now when you're syncing with SAP, if it's a delta sync and it's interrupted, either by you or say a loss of connectivity with SAP, then when you next sync, the sync steps will pick up from where you stopped and were successfully up to. Another small thing, mobile app version and sync type on exports. So on user sync, we now log the mobile application version and export this and the sync type so that whether it's a full or delta sync so that the admin users can export this for further analysis. Carl, I know this sync improvement may seem trivial when you're sitting at a desktop or on a browser, but at the sharp end, I think that improvements like this can make a big difference. What do you think?
Common question I get from our customers is how we decide what amount of time to spend on different functions within our application. And one of the things I always emphasize to them, it's not about the new functions in all cases, of which there are always many, and we've seen a lot of them today, but also the constant great work the team does to keep the application running and modern. And I think people understand and realize that working on this back-end configurability and maintaining currency in the app, removing technical debt, is something that is a constant task that is really important that we do every day and needs to be recognised. And I'm glad you've called it out in this particular slide here, Craig, along with the other things you've done.
Great. So now some general admin improvements. Check for changes now when you navigate away from the user and material profiles if you're an administrator. We perform the check for changes and prompt you to save. In terms of searching, administrators can now search the user profiles based upon the description in addition to their reference. In terms of the user profile filter, we've added a new filter for users to include the function location and equipment SAP user status. And in terms of inactive user profiles, we now include a warning if you're trying to generate a profile that are inactive. Now, again, a series of small improvements. A couple in there are directly from customer requests. Okay, so more general admin improvements. So the program that runs to process event queue, we've now stopped it from being able to run multiple instances. So if one instance was taking a little bit longer and you had a scheduled job that kicked off another instance, it will now check to see if it's active and stop it from running. Upload and download for the online report definitions. Just enable that so that administrators can move it between the SAP instances a little bit easier. And we've also introduced the ability to log changes made in the admin configuration area. Let's go and have a look at that now. So if I come into the administration area, maintain core settings, I'm in a profile, and I can now see any change documents either for the global change documents or profile specific ones. So if I have a look at this, then it's going to call out in a little bit of technical detail, but this is a technical area, what table got changed, what the key that got changed was, and their old from and to values along with who did it. So this not only gives you a bit of an audit record, but also allows you, if you're making minor changes to see what's going on, you can always work your way back again. So that was the global changes there. And similarly, if we're on a core config, then these are the changes that have been made in that area too. Carl, you've seen a few systems set up and been involved in finding problems with configuration changes. I suspect you'll be a fan of this change document functionality.
Yes, absolutely, Craig. Many of our customers are using BlueWorx for safety and mission critical functions. And being able to maintain the robustness of the solution is really important. On a personal note, sometimes I always wonder what happens. I suspect it's probably my own mistakes, and this will enable us to track down exactly who did what and when.
Yeah, thanks, Carl. Okay, on with some other items in terms of application development and coding improvements. So the first thing to note is that we've changed to make use of Neptune design resource folders instead of underscore pages. The resource folders were not initially provided when we first created BlueWorx, and we've had to wait until our Neptune releases allowed their introduction with the supported releases. So while this is a small change, it means that the application is not having to load and reference multiple pages, which are never rendered. So incremental change, and it just makes it a little bit easier for developers. In terms of custom document framework, some customers make use of third-party document management systems, which they need to handle with their own processing logic. So we've now improved the technical enablement of this to make that job easier for them. We've also improved our technical delivery of the classes used to make changes to the administration settings. So the next three items are around improvements to the inspection viewer application. So rather than talk them through, I'm going to go straight in to demonstrate these and explain the changes from there. So I'm going to go into the inspection viewer, and you can immediately see that there's some changes with the parameters that are available now for you to use. Previously, we could only see inspections that were complete. Now we can see other statuses prior to that. So if I enter the in progress status, for example, give it a date of a few weeks back, and then search for inspections, I can see that there's a couple of inspections that are listed in progress and not as previously just showing those that are completed. We can also now, instead of just filtering on the inspection itself, we can go and filter for questions. So let's go and have a look at skipped, and we have a look at the questions with that. And it's showing those as status. It's also showing the hidden by rule, which is effectively a skipped item. So a lot more reporting and analysis that's now available at a lot more granular level. Carl, the inspection functionality continues to be one of the core areas that customers give feedback on and want more functionality. Any comment on these additions?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, obviously the users of BlueWorx are constantly surprising us in the way that they use this inspections functionality. I get asked quite often, why do we call it inspections? Because they use it for other things as well. But I think as people are moving through the life cycle of using these sorts of this sort of functionality, people are now moving from that phase of collecting the information into doing more analysis. And this additional standard reporting is going to help them basically do this analysis and get more value out of the data that they've collected.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. And I've got one of those coming up right now as well.
I am well aware that we're going to see something right on that topic coming up next as well. I think it's very valid and a big area of improvement in the current release.
Yeah, inspection monitoring and improvement. So we can now, as an administrator, you can select multiple inspection responses to reprocess or mark as being manually adjusted or that they were in error. And in terms of the inspection user experience changes, so we've had some great feedback from one of our customers around juddering of questions in the response list. So we've adjusted it to stop repositioning of the list when responding to questions. And we've also included the question group text in the list view to stop that context being lost if you're sort of, 10 questions down in a group. You don't necessarily know the context of the group of questions, so that's repeated at each list item. The only thing to note there is that if you're using rules in your inspections, if that is triggered to show or hide a question, then necessarily the list will refresh. So to show you the juddering versus non-juddering, I can't actually show that, but I can show you the ability to do mass changes. We'll come into our administration app. This is our testing system. Have a look at the inspections log. We'll filter for the errors. And you can see there's a nice long list of these. And of course, you'd take a little bit more care to review some of these, but previously you had to drill down into each one of these to mark it as something different. Now we can just go and set all of those to ignore just in one fell swoop. Or it could be to approve in mass, or it could be to reprocess or to mark them as being manually adjusted. Carl, any comments on that?
Yes, this is a piece of functionality that has been specifically requested by a couple of customers who have, for various different reasons, large number of errors. So I know two customers in particular that are looking forward to this functionality. And yeah, we don't like to see a lot of errors in these lists, but it happens from time to time, either deliberately or by mistake. So it's good to see just a user experience improvement to help those particular individuals or those customers.
Okay, some more improvements. Improved relationship reporting. We've improved how we show the relationship between the inspection configuration objects. For example, in the last release, we introduced a tree control to allow better representation of the inspection groups and questions, and we added the option to answer questions in the list. In Support Pack 13, we now show this setting in the tree control, and a number of other improvements to show how many times a question is being used in groups, how many times a group is being used in inspections, how many questions are within the groups. So instead of having to drill down into the detail of your configuration area, a lot more is upfront so that you can see it and take action in that way. Another small change, some of the fields in functional locations and equipment are in the SAP GUI in uppercase. However, the function that SAP provides to make the updates does not convert to uppercase. So to resolve that inconsistency. Now when you answer those values on those special fields, we are converting to uppercase. Inspection objects list. So this is another one requested by customers. So prior to this release, inspections would connect with all objects on their order objects list, which also included the order header objects. Feedback from customers is they wanted to have a way to do this more precisely, and which limits that connection. So we've done that with 3 new options that we've listed there. Inspection attachments, so another customer request. You can now insist that users upload a file when responding to a question. I think that would require some careful consideration before you go and turn that on, but it is available. And we now have included an inspection question attachment template. So this has another customer request, and basically the way we've delivered it is we now have the ability to associate a file with an inspection question. So this allows, for example, more detailed instructions or evaluations to occur that might otherwise be available using the HTML text that we provide. Perhaps more importantly, access to the documents able to perform the calculations based upon user import parameters on the device outside of BlueWorx. What does that mean? Well, you might associate, for example, an Excel file. You can then go and download that to your device. You could open up, you could punch in all your calculations using Excel and come up with a pass-fail based upon a number of custom parameters that you're inputting. So what we've delivered is the ability to register these documents and then associate them with one or more questions, and then they will be synced to the device for offline use. I'll demo this after we work through the next 2 items. So reason codes, based upon customer feedback, we now support configurable values to be used when an asset cannot be inspected, rather than previously we just had a asset not found value. So really ramped up in that area. And we've included change documents in a pretty similar way that we've done it in the core config area to allow you to record and see the changes that you made in configuration. Okay, let's go and have a look at these 3 areas, starting with document templates. So I come into the inspection configuration area, and you see there's a new tab, documents, and I've gone and registered a new file, asset naming conventions. And I can see that it's been used for equipment description and functional location description questions. I now come into BlueWorx itself, come into an inspection, have a look at that one of those inspections that this document or question has been assigned to, and it was the equipment description. And you can see there's now a new item here for document templates, and I can see that there's a PDF that's available for me to make use of. Now let's have a look at the asset not inspected codes. So we can come in to a new tab that's here. You can come up with whatever codes that you like that work for your business, but there's now a series that I've maintained here. And if I come over into an inspection, and I select asset not inspected, then I get those codes that are available for me to go and use. And those are available for you now in the inspection admin application for you to go and see why assets were not inspected. So the second point here was on the change documents. So very similar to the way that we've implemented it in the core inspection area. If I come into an inspection, I now have a change document button down the bottom. And when I go and have a look at that, I can see any changes that were made to the inspection itself and its immediately associated objects. There's also change documents on the inspection question groups and on the questions and so on. So more improvements in this crucial area, Carl. How do you think customers are going to utilise these?
Well, I have to comment on the attaching documents or templates to inspection questions. It's something I know I championed for this release due to some work I've done with a number of customers. As sophisticated as our inspections processes, they've always come up with something that is either used very, very infrequently but is important, or something that's highly complex that they want to use a template for and fill out and then attach that document to it. It covers that, that 5% where the 95% is covered by a standard functionality, but I still think it's critical, and as customers have pointed out, it's critical. So I'm a big fan of that one, and I suspect I will be advocating its use on a fairly regular basis. But also, once again, the change documents is a great example where we've got customers using this functionality for safety and mission critical functions, and the ability to maintain the integrity of the system is something they're asking for on a regular basis.
Yeah, thanks, Carl. We're almost there. The last two items. So the first is around inspection analytics. So we've implemented functionality that allows some operational review of the inspection's progress. Those of you familiar with this area will be aware that we keep the current state of inspections and not the historic state. However, in later releases, we aligned date tracking to allow us to broadly report on the transition from open to completed states, and so we're allowing some analysis of that to occur from this release. Print inspection definitions. So this is a wholly new thing for this release. So we recognize that transferring inspections often from paper-based formats to computer formats can be challenging, as can the review of the transformed inspections by experts who may not necessarily have the skills and experience to review the outcome of its parts by question and assess it in the whole context of an overall inspection. For this reason, we're now allowing you to generate a configuration representation of the inspections in an on-screen format, and where required, you can then print that to PDF for distribution and review. So I'll explain that a little bit more in the demonstration. So the first area is the inspection analytics. So if I come into the inspections log, we had this basic chart available before. We now have inspection analytics. It defaults to the last month, and I'm going to go and select a maintenance plant. Inspection is required, and execute that. So the results from, in this case, one of our test systems shows the progression of open inspections as a count and the creation of more inspections, adding to that open count, and those that are completed. If I select a date, for example this one, then it's going to, in the chart below, go and show me all the inspections that were current or created on that date. So basically the premise here is that over time you can see if you're winning or losing the war to if you like, get the inspections that you had planned to get done, that you've configured to be done, and whether they're actually being completed. Okay, now let's move on to have a look at the printing of inspections. I'll come into the admin area again, and I'll have a look at an inspection for vehicles. And we can see that there is this new print option down the bottom. When I select that, it's come up with a very detailed page, gives an introduction, allows you with the table of contents to move around the content quite easily, And then it's showing you the inspection header, any translations, the objects that you've set up to connect this inspection to, any rules that are involved, and then the question groups. So in this case, there's only one group, and the questions in order within that group. Any translations for those, and then one by one, the inspection definition. And so on. All the way down to any answer groups that have been used by the questions, any rules that have been used as well. And in the standard template, we've gone and put off some change management blocks, just in case you're wanting to use paper copies for change management reasons. Now, for some customers in their use case, this may be too much detail. For example, for an engineer to review, they don't necessarily need to see the detailed setup of each individual question. So we've also allowed you to configure with someone with a reasonable skill how or what information is shown on here. Maybe include your own company reference or procedures or engineering change control references, for example. And that's in the core administration settings area. What do you think about those? First the analytics and now the print inspection.
Both been specifically asked for by customers. I can talk to and really well implemented. I can talk to sort of where those have come from and the benefits our customers expect to see from these sorts of activities. The inspection analytics one is exactly like you said. It's really about, are we winning the battle? People want to see a running average of how many inspections am I issuing and how many am I completing, and what does that leave in the middle? Is it slowly growing or slowly shrinking? It seems nice and easy for some of our customers that are doing 10 or 15 inspections a day, but we've got customers doing thousands of inspections a day, for which these sorts of analytics are the only way you can manage the business. And once again, the print inspection definition, I love the idea that all the information is there. It is relatively easy, even for a non-technical person like myself, to be able to hide fields. But with everything there already, it's fairly easy to adjust. And we do expect customers to adjust it for their own use. But it's not too difficult to do, and something that most customers should have the appropriate skills within the organisation to do it.
Excellent. Okay, so that's it for Support Pack 13. Thanks for watching. We hope you like what you've seen and can see how it can provide additional value to your operations. Special thanks to our customers who, as you've heard from the commentary, have provided the inspiration for many of the new and improved features in this release. As with prior releases, I'd also like to acknowledge that SAP is the underlying solution for BlueWorx, and that it, along with the fantastic solution from Neptune Software, is how we can deliver this business value to you. Carl, last word goes to you, please.
Thanks a lot, Craig, and a big thanks to your team as well. For those of you who don't know, Craig doesn't do this by himself. He's got a really competent and really special team sitting behind him that sits in New Zealand. Done a fantastic job in both creating the code, ensuring that it's an appropriate quality, and then providing all the documentation that you as customers see and get to adopt. I know we've got a number of customers that are going to pick this up almost straight away, so we're really excited to see this in the wild over the next couple of months. And also looking forward to your continued feedback for the next version. Thanks.
Excellent. Thanks, Carl. See you, everyone.
Awesome.